Ma'am, pull over right now. Hands on the wheel where I can see them, Mom.
Officer, this is my driveway. I live here.
I said hands on the wheel. Don't make this difficult.
What you just heard was the moment a rookie cop's racial bias turned a simple drive home into a career-ending nightmare. At 7:45 p.m. on a warm Friday evening, Aisha Michelle Thompson was pulling into her own driveway after a long day in federal court when blue lights suddenly filled her rearview mirror. The officer claimed she was driving suspiciously and matched the description of a suspect in a nearby theft. He had no idea he had just pulled over one of the most powerful civil rights prosecutors in the Southeast, a woman who had already sent dozens of corrupt officers to federal prison. In the next minutes, this 32-year-old black woman would calmly, brilliantly, and devastatingly take apart the officer's actions, expose a pattern of racial profiling in his department, and trigger a federal investigation that would end his career and send him to prison for a decade. This is the full, unfiltered story. This is what happens when a rookie cop racially profiles the wrong black woman right in front of her own home. This is justice served slow, painful, shocking, and absolutely devastating. Before we step into that tense Friday evening, let me take you back to where it all began, to the moments that forged Aisha Michelle Thompson into the woman who would one day stand in her own driveway and stare down an armed officer without flinching. Aisha was born in 1994 in a cramped two-bedroom apartment in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward. The neighborhood was loud, proud, and struggling. Her father, Marcus Thompson, was a postal carrier who walked his route every single day with quiet dignity. Her mother, Denise, worked long hours in a school cafeteria, smiling through swollen feet and aching back just to put food on the table. They were good people, honest people, people who believed that if you worked hard enough and stayed out of trouble, the world would eventually treat you fairly. They were wrong. From the time Aisha was 5 years old, she witnessed her father's repeated humiliations at the hands of police. She still carries those memories like scars that never fully healed. She was 5 the first time she saw it happen. Her father had been pulled over for driving too slowly. She sat in the back seat, clutching her little backpack, watching in terror as 2 officers made her father step out of the car, spread his legs, and place his hands on the hot hood while they searched him. She heard the contempt in their voices. She saw the way they looked at him, not as a man, not as a father, but as a threat. One particular night when she was 9 years old became the defining trauma of her childhood. Her father had just picked her up from an after-school program. They were driving home, laughing about her day, when blue lights suddenly filled the rearview mirror. The officer claimed Marcus matched the description of a robbery suspect. He was yanked from the car at gunpoint, slammed against the hood, searched roughly, and handcuffed while Aisha screamed from the back seat. She watched her father, a gentle man who had never raised his hand to anyone, being treated like an animal in front of his daughter. The officer tore through their car, throwing things onto the street, while her father stood silently, eyes filled with shame and helplessness. When they were finally released with no apology, Aisha asked her father through tears, "Daddy, why do they hate us so much?" Her father pulled the car over, turned around, and looked at her with eyes full of pain and love. "Because some people see our skin first, and our character never." Those words burned themselves into Aisha's soul that night. From that moment on, she became obsessed with justice. While other children played, Aisha read every book about civil rights she could find. While other teenagers partied, Aisha volunteered at legal aid clinics, watching attorneys fight for people who looked like her father. She carried that pain like armor. She graduated valedictorian from her high school. She earned a full scholarship to Spelman College. Then she went on to Harvard Law School, graduating in the top 5% of her class. But Aisha didn't want the glamorous corporate life. She turned down multiple six-figure offers from top law firms. She came home to Atlanta with one mission: to become the kind of prosecutor who could make sure no other little black girl would ever have to watch her father be humiliated simply for existing. She joined the U.S. Attorney's Office and quickly became the go-to prosecutor for civil rights violations and police misconduct cases. In just 6 years, she had prosecuted over 24 officers. She had secured more than 140 years of combined prison sentences. She had a 91% conviction rate in cases others called impossible. She became known as the Reckoning. Police unions hated her. Some officers called her dangerous. But the families she fought for called her their guardian angel. Aisha lived in a quiet, beautiful modern home in an upscale Atlanta suburb, a home she had bought with her own money after years of hard work. She lived there alone, focused entirely on her work and quietly supporting her 2 younger sisters who were still in college. On that Friday evening, Aisha had just finished a long day in federal court. She was still wearing her professional blouse and slacks, her hair pulled back neatly. She was pulling into her own driveway when the blue lights suddenly appeared behind her. The rookie officer, 26-year-old Kyle Brennan, claimed she was driving suspiciously and matched the description of a suspect in a nearby theft. The confrontation that followed would change everything. Aisha didn't panic. She didn't raise her voice. She stayed calm and professional, the same way she handled herself in federal court. She told the officer she lived there and was pulling into her own driveway. Officer Brennan escalated immediately. He demanded she step out of the car, hand hovering near his taser, treating her like a dangerous suspect instead of a resident coming home. Aisha remained composed. She told him she was an assistant United States attorney and that she was not resisting, but she needed to know the reason for the stop. That single sentence changed everything. The officer froze for a moment. Then came the first major twist. Brennan's partner, who had been standing back, suddenly recognized Aisha's face from news coverage of a recent high-profile police misconduct case she had prosecuted. He whispered something to Brennan. Instead of backing down, Brennan doubled down. He told Aisha she was under arrest for obstructing an investigation and resisting a lawful order. Aisha calmly reminded him that she had not resisted and that she was on her own property. Brennan ignored her and moved to pull her from the car. That was the moment Aisha made the call that would destroy his career. She told him, clearly and firmly, that if he laid hands on her, she would personally ensure he faced federal civil rights charges. The partner stepped back. Brennan hesitated, but it was too late. Aisha's neighbor had already started filming from across the street, and another neighbor called 911 to report an officer harassing a resident in her own driveway. The Bodycam footage captured every second. By the next morning, the video was circulating internally at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Aisha immediately opened a formal complaint and triggered a federal investigation. What investigators uncovered was explosive. Officer Kyle Brennan had a documented pattern of racially biased stops, particularly targeting black drivers and homeowners in upscale neighborhoods. He had been written up twice before for similar behavior, but the complaints had been quietly dismissed. The investigation revealed that Brennan had been part of an unofficial cleanup crew within the department, officers who targeted black residents they believed didn't belong in certain areas. Aisha led the prosecution. Over the next 16 months, she built an airtight case. She presented bodycam footage, internal complaint records, text messages between officers, and heartbreaking witness testimony from multiple victims of similar racial profiling. The trial was intense and deeply emotional. Brennan's defense team tried to paint Aisha as biased and vindictive. They called her a race baiter and claimed she was using her position for personal revenge. Then came the second major twist. During the trial, one of Brennan's own former partners, Officer Ramirez, took the stand as a surprise witness for the prosecution. He testified under oath that Brennan had bragged about cleaning up the neighborhood by targeting black residents who didn't look like they belonged there. He admitted that Brennan had pressured him to sign off on questionable stops and had even joked about teaching them a lesson. The courtroom fell silent. Aisha used that moment to deliver her closing argument. She stood in front of the jury, voice steady but filled with quiet fire, and delivered words that would echo far beyond that courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, 14 years ago, I sat in the back seat of my father's car and watched police officers humiliate him for no reason other than the color of his skin. I was 9 years old. That memory has never left me. I still remember the way his hands trembled as he placed them on the hood of our car. I still remember the shame in his eyes when he looked back at me through the window. I still remember asking him why they kept doing this to us, and hearing him say, because some people see our skin first, and our character never. That moment shaped my entire life. Today, I stand before you not as a prosecutor seeking revenge, but as a woman who has spent her entire life fighting to make sure no other little black girl has to watch her father be treated like a criminal simply for existing. Officer Brennan looked at me that evening and saw only my skin. He did not see a Harvard-educated lawyer. He did not see a woman who has dedicated her life to justice. He saw a threat. He saw a criminal. He saw someone who didn't belong in that neighborhood. That is the very definition of racial profiling. And that is exactly why we are here today. Officer Ramirez's testimony proved it. The body cam footage proved it. The pattern of complaints proved it. I ask you today to send a clear message. Tell every officer in this country that the law applies to them too. Tell every black family that their home is their castle, regardless of the color of their skin. Tell every little girl watching her father be humiliated that one day she can grow up and hold those officers accountable. Because that little girl was me, and today, I am holding them accountable. The jury deliberated for only 9 hours. They found Officer Kyle Brennan guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. The department was forced to pay over $14 million in settlements to victims of the unit's illegal practices. Major reforms were implemented across the force. Aisha Thompson became a national symbol of courage and excellence. She continues her work today with even greater passion. She still lives in that same beautiful home. She still goes for her evening drives. And she still pulls into her driveway with the same quiet authority she showed that Friday evening. Because she knows better than most that rights only matter when someone is brave enough to defend them. This story is about more than one rookie cop and one traffic stop. It is about the quiet power of a Black woman who refused to be defined by someone else's prejudice. It is about what happens when the system meets someone who knows how to use it against itself. It is about justice, raw, unapologetic, and long overdue. If this story moved you, angered you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, hit that like button hard, leave a comment below, and share it with someone who needs to see it. What's one thing you're taking away from Aisha's story today? Subscribe and turn on notifications. We bring you these raw, unfiltered body cam justice stories every single week. We'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there, and remember, when they come for your rights, stand tall, speak clearly, and never back down.